Yep.
That's awesome. Okay, so welcome everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. A nice little nippy Friday morning. And I just want to introduce to you Kenny, who has agreed to come and share some thoughts and some of his wisdom with us. So Kenny is one of our coaches up in Johannesburg. He had a very accomplished career with CTM before deciding to take some of his expertise that he has built up over his career and share it within the business community in a wider audience. So we're very lucky to have Kenny with us this morning. He's getting great results with his clients. Just some awesome wins during this period, which is really hard to do in terms of getting some great results with his clients, and then obviously supporting a lot of the ones that are really battling and close just to get through this period. So Kenny, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to hand over to you. Just by the way, if anyone's got any questions, please type them in the question box. Annie, if you could man the questions there and just relay any questions that pop up. So I'm going to hand over to Kenny.
Oh, thanks very much, Shirley. And yeah, good morning to everybody from a very, very cold Joburg. It's freezing at -4 this morning on the chill factor. So yeah, really cold. And what a better way to start the day by having a conversation about how to build trust in your relationships during this time. And you know, the trust in the relationships that you build. And I chose this opening phrase or quote from Michelle Obama, and it was really truly fitting this morning for me, because just between 8 and 9 every Friday morning, I have a bit of a weekly chat with my clients and that, and we get together, and it was really an uplifting session this morning. There were a couple of tears, etc., and because emotions have really started coming high. And the important thing, and that's kind of where this whole conversation goes around today, is people have got to feel trust with you. And in the environment this morning, when people were actually breaking down because they felt safe, they felt that they could trust the people that were in the weekly chat, that they could actually open up and let their emotions out and share how they feel. And all too often we forget that we are human, and the human interaction plays a huge role in our environment. And you can't, in the current challenging times that we're in, you can't just go up to somebody and give them a hug, because if we were meeting together this morning, there would have been a lot of hugs going on. So you have to find ways of giving those hugs in different ways. So yeah, choose the people who want to lift you up, stay around with them, work with them, and support each other. And one of the messages I gave out to everybody and the challenge for the week to them, and to come back next week and to share it, is what have they offered to another business owner that they wouldn't have normally expected to offer it? Whether it's just, hey, let's have a virtual cup of coffee, or let's have a meet, or, you know, he has a referral for you, or he has, you know, where do you need, I heard you were battling with human resources, let me share a little bit for you. You know, reach out for each other and show people that you care, because it's really and truly, we're going through a period where building relationships is challenging. Yeah, and I suppose I'm going to cover them as we go along. And if I move on, this is what we always were used to, you know, gathering with people in a nice warm environment, being able to share and building relationships when we see each other in person is so much easier. You know, you can walk into a room and pick up who's in a good mood and pick up who's having a bad day, and share, and, you know, and even pull each other one side and just say, hey, you okay? It's a lot easier in the real world. But the reality is that real world is not quite with us yet, although it's starting to come back in smaller groups and so on. And the reality is, this is the life we kind of living. This is, you know, the people and the scenarios, and people are becoming so preoccupied whilst in a meeting. So while they're online, people are on their phones, people are doing other things. They're not showing the interest and the care that there would be when you face to face. So how do you change that? How do you make that change? Because you don't want this cold, and maybe the slide kind of brought the cold to Joburg this morning, but that's the reality. Sometimes a meeting, you go into it, it's an online session, and it's really and truly cold and miserable. And for me, there's nothing worse than having even like now, a presentation, but not being able to communicate with people. When you do it live and in person, it's just so much easier because you can pick up the vibe in the room, you can pick up how people are discussing things and attention to what. But when in the virtual world, in the world that we're living in right now, it becomes a lot more difficult. So how do you actually go about building those relationships online? How do you build those relationships with people that you need to do business with online? And in the coaching industry, it's been extremely challenging. And we normally would face a procedure that we would go through in building relationships and getting to the point where somebody would come on board as a client. And we've had to go back and re-look at that. So one of the things that Brad Sugars, who's the founder of Action Coach, mentioned was we've got a 13-step process that we go through. Right now, we don't know, is it a 9-step process or a 17-step process? We're going to have to go through it. So building that relationship, I've found, is taking longer because you get to meet somebody online, but you've now got to go so many further steps forward and build that relationship with them. You've got to change the way you were doing stuff. You've got to really go and find, okay, what makes that person tick? How do they think? So we have to find new ways of getting to know each other. And one of the key ways of getting to know somebody is letting them talk. We need to find ways to actually allow them to share with us where they're at, what is happening in their lives. At what point do we just stop, listen, and understand what people are doing? Because the moment you understand somebody, the moment you understand where they're at, what their challenges are, suddenly, when you've shown that you're listening and that you care, they will be open with you. Because a lot of people are very resistant. They're very resistant to share their feelings and very resistant to what will people think of me. You've got to get over that. When you meet in person, it's easy to get over. But right now, you've got to learn to change that way, and you've got to adapt to getting to understand how people think and getting to adapt them. And I'll share with you, Nana, one of the key things that's helped me do it. But before that, let's just have a look at some of the things that you need right now. Is you need trust. Without trust, you're never going to do any business with anybody online. Because how do you know these people are genuine? You go and you sign up for something, or you're interested, you see somebody's marketing themselves online. How do you actually start doing business with them? Fill in a credit card detail and hope to goodness gracious that it's going to work? No, you can't just do it that way. You've got to build the rapport and understand. You've got to share things in common. You've got to share your passions. You've got to understand what their passion is. I signed a client on Tuesday. I met them virtually online on Monday, had a good chat. Tuesday, had another chat. And because I listened to what they were saying, understood what they were saying, they signed on Tuesday with me. Because they straight away, because I took in who they are, what do they want to achieve in life, where do they want to go, suddenly they felt comfortable with me. They felt safe with me. And she signed up, and we start the coaching next week with them. And that was done by using some of the talents you learn over time. But the biggest one is I listened to her. I listened to what she had to say. I didn't listen to answer, because that's a big mistake so many people make. We will be talking about something, and suddenly we just want to jump in and tell them what we think. Let the person finish, and then you'll actually get to understand them. So how do we do that? We do that through, we use DISC. It's a great thing to understand somebody. And people are all different, but we all have the various levels of DISC-in, and I'll explain them now, is everybody has the ability to be whoever they need to be, whoever you have to be. However, we are naturally driven by our values, driven by our cultures, driven by the way we think, driven by what we've learned to be somebody who we are, who we've grown up to be. And we have to learn the skills to understand other people so that we can adapt to what we need to be right now and who we need to be for others. And therefore, people will relate to you and people will feel so much more connected and trust you so much more. So if we move on to what these are, is the D, that dominant person. You know, when you look at somebody who's dominant, you can pick it up very quickly. They fidgety online. They will lean forward, listen to you, and then sit back and almost fold their arms. And okay, cool. I've got to find a different way of breaking through to them. And therefore, you've got to be short, quick, to the point. They're not going to share their emotions with you. They're not going to share their feelings with you. Definitely not on the first session. You've got to keep challenging them and push them and make them go, okay, well, yeah, he's got a point, and how do we break that point down? So you've got to be on the ball with them, to the point. Then you get the people, the influencers. They're the ones who want to impress you. They want you to be following every word they've got to say. They always positive. They always like going, yeah, okay, cool. How do we do that? How do we get on going on? And they really, truly, they want to know about you as well. They want to know who you are and what do you do, etc. And they are the outgoing people. These two will generally walk into any room or go into any online presentation, and want to take over and want to be the people that people pay attention to. Now, you don't have to be one of those two, but you'll always have part of you that is there. There is that underlying part of you that wants to influence people, that wants to be friendly, enthusiastic, and optimistic, that's driven for results and driven for direction and has a competitive edge. It's about how you bring those things out that make people actually understand it. And then we go back to the more reserved people, and the people who are by the book. They play the rules by the book. I'll only speak when spoken to. I'll only do what you ask me to do. I'll go back and re-look at something 15 times over. I'm never going to give you an answer right now. I will, even though, and here's one of the things about compliance people, is they've made up their decision already about you, but they will reserve that to rather tell you later, because they want to go back and make sure that they're on the right track and that they are happy to tell you when they want to tell you, and they'll double check and cross everything off and make sure that it's worked. And then you get the steadiness side, where people really and truly will take their time to understand and let the influencer and the dominant person take control over the situation and say what they've got to say and do everything. And they'll just quietly wait for you to be finished and then give it to you straightforward in the way it is, and with lots of love and care, etc. And it's about being able to understand those people by listening. If you take the time and listen to what people have to say, then suddenly those people will actually stop, listen to you, and then you'll be able to identify who they are. How do you respond to them so that they feel, hey, this person gets me, this person understands me? Because when somebody understands you, you feel so much more comfortable with them. You know, if you think of examples in life, I automatically go back and think school teachers. School teachers, you either loved your teacher or you hated your teacher. And why? Why did you either hate them or love them? It was simply, how much attention did they pay towards you? How did they make you feel when you walked into the classroom? Did you feel welcome? Did you feel on edge? Because those are the decisions that make you feel whether you love them or not. And yeah, I remember I probably had a million crushes on a million different little teachers that were there during my school career. And then there were the male teachers who kind of, you know, you either scared of them and had that fear because they delivered that fear factor, or you find them, okay, this guy's cool, I can get on with him. And it's the same when you go into the work environment. When you started a new position in a new company, how did you feel? How did they make you feel on that first day? Was it uncomfortableness? Were you scared to ask for things? And those are the skills that you need to develop to make people feel more comfortable. How often have you gone into a meeting and you feel, hey, you know what, gee, I really like that person. Think back, well, what made them like you, or you like them? Was it because they welcomed you in with comfort and warmth and listened to who you were and listened to what you could offer and then jumped in? So you've got to learn how to adapt to the different people. I mean, my DISC profile is, yeah, is an IC, okay? So I'm influence people, I'm optimistic, I'm friendly, etc. But I'm also very cautious, and I find that by just listening to people and allowing people to actually share what they want to say gets better results. So if you really and truly want to get good results out of the people that work for you, or people, and when I say people that work for you, I'm also including your suppliers, your service providers, your clients. They all are part of your team, and all of those people deliver the results that you're delivering. And if you're having conflict on either end, the environment that you run in isn't a comfortable place to be. So learning to adapt to people and their styles helps you understand what you need to say to them, how you need to say it, and the way you need to treat them. So this profiling, and if any of you would really and truly like to understand your own DISC, I'm sure Shirley is more than willing to take you through it and learn how to adapt to the people that you need to deal with every day. And I'd like to ultimately open this up.
Sorry, we've just got a question in.
Yeah.
Are there any telltale signs to identify someone's DISC when you're in, let's say, a Zoom meeting? What are the sort of things that you might be looking for to identify which DISC profile a person might have?
So what I've been picking up over the last couple of months is ultimately when somebody's on a call with you is the attention they're paying. Very quickly, if somebody is a dominant type on the dominant side, they're going to be very fidgety. They're going to pay attention in the beginning, and then you'll see they'll actually sit back in their chair and kind of like stare at you because they're waiting for you to get to the point. Okay, the influential type of person will listen, and you can almost see they're waiting. They want to have something to say. They want to make their mark in the meeting. So if you got only one person and it's a one-to-one session, they won't allow you to finish talking because they want to take over. They want to start putting their input into it. And therefore you can start and allow them to do that. On the compliance side, they will sit there and they'll generally be making notes and nodding their head. Yeah, okay, you know, I get it, yeah, and they'll make lots of notes. And then they'll come back. They'll come back to something you spoke about a few minutes ago, and say, okay, I just want to go back and clarify this. Okay. On the steadiness side is they'll listen with you can, and you'll see they'll actually slowly nod their head to you, and they're taking it all in, and they patiently would be waiting for you to finish, and then they'll take their time before they actually answer you, and then you can start identifying. I hope that kind of answers the question. You know, just those little things are things that you can pick up very quickly.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think that does help.
Cool. Are there any others? I mean, I'd like to just open this up and let this become an open conversation, because exactly what I've just been saying, well, you've got to make the conversation happen. You've all had your turn to listen. Now I'd like to listen. What are the challenges you face? Do you feel that any of you have a staff member or colleague that you can't quite connect with? And see if we can identify a little bit of their profile.
So whilst we're just waiting for that to come in, I mean, there's a lot of talk around the sort of sales environment and connecting, and there's a lot of talk around, you know, building this level of trust. And you yourself also mentioned that, you know, it seems to take a little bit longer. So can you sort of share any experiences or things that you find have helped to build trust, particularly on the online process, you know, the online situation?
Yeah, Shirley. I think, like I mentioned earlier on, I have this weekly chat group, and what it was is, you know, a lot of people were going through a tight time and really panicking, etc. So I created this group just a place for people to share their experiences. And so what I found is, yeah, when I get to meet somebody new, or somebody has interest in what I'm doing, etc., and we have the initial first conversation, I invite them into something like that, because you can't get to meet me in person right now, and therefore, how do you know who I am, and how do you know whether you can trust me or not? What a better platform where you have other people all together who have already built their trust with you, and they, through their interaction with you and the way that they talk about things you've done together and how you've worked together, they suddenly go, oh wow, this person I see is trustworthy. I see this person can be trusted. Their character is showing through other people. And I found that works, because once somebody has been into one of those chats, the next thing is they want to chat more with you in a one-to-one environment. Okay, Sean's mentioned here, find the dominance and influence are easier to spot than the steadiness and compliance. Yeah, because those two can get quite confused quite often between the steadiness and compliance, but because of being reserved. And I think that's the point. So, you know, you have to watch their behavior and watch the way they do stuff, Sean. It's really, there is a fine line between them, but once you understand the fine line, it's much easier to direct them in the right way. And a lot of it goes down to understanding all four quarters, and understand the strengths and weaknesses and what to say to each person and what not to say to them. I think
I think from my experience, the dominant and the influencers, you identify them very quickly, so you can almost work it as a sort of a default, you know, if they don't look like these Ys, because those are normally quite, you know, easy to spot, then you must be dealing with either a C or an S, you know, and then from there, to try and ascertain whether they're more people orientated or detail orientated. You can almost spot them in reverse, if you know what I mean, by exclude the D's and I's, and you're then left with the C's and S's. Yeah.
And I think it's mainly because, you know, your D's and I's, they're out there, they direct. You know, with the reservedness between your C's and your S's, they can often be misunderstood. They can often be taken as not really caring, that they're just along for the ride sometimes. And they're actually very important people to quickly identify, because the quicker you can identify with them, the quicker you can build that relationship and get them to open up and get them to actually bring out their own D and their own I in them, because we all have every single aspect of it. And I've always found that, maybe because I was often in my old working environment classed as a CS, where my natural was more of an I, was because they often will look at the D's and the I's and go, okay, let me see what I can learn from them.
Yeah, I had an extraordinary experience where I was, which illustrates that point, Kenny. I was called in for a meeting with a senior director of a big privately owned business. And he was having problem really communicating with his board, and he was saying that he was finding that in the board meetings they were just talking over him and he wasn't getting an opportunity to talk, or if he was, you know, having a chance to talk, it was a matter of minutes and then they would be off on talking and what have you, and talking completely past him, and he was becoming very frustrated with the situation. And he was such a high C, such a high compliance. He was an engineer, which is sort of an atypical profile of an engineer. He was so obviously that, and obviously such a clever man and understood what he was going through. And I found it so interesting because I'm a DI, so I knew that he was comfortable with silence. I knew that he would be slower in his presentation. And I'd sit and in my mind I was saying, okay, now, you know, he's comfortable with silence, you know, just keep quiet, you know, he's slow, and it's, I know, you know, the theory of what to do. And it was so interesting because I broke the silence every time. Just, you know, his ability and his style was just so stretched my style so much that mine came up wanting. And the thing that really, he understood the profiles, and we discussed the profiles and the effect that it was having, and the rest of the board are clearly mainly Ds and DIs that were you know, sort of talking over and getting involved and what have you. And you know, the message really is that you've got to adapt your style to meet the others. Otherwise, they're always just going to talk over you. So if you are like in his case at high C, he had to bring out his D's and his I's. If he didn't have any, he had to fake them, you know. He had to meet them at that level. Otherwise, you know, he just was never going to get a show in. So it was really interesting within that context.
But, you know, surely that's the beauty of understanding the profiling is, you know, every one of us has all four quarters in us, and adapt. I mean, I mentioned earlier on, I was seen as a CS in the corporate world, and that was mainly because of the role I was playing. And when I had to be an I, or I had to be a D, you find ways of adapting it. And I had no idea about D's, CIs, and all of that back in those days. And I wish I had, because it would have given me more of a understanding on how to actually manage those who are domineering, those that are highly influential. Because when you know how to manage them and how to deal with them, you very quickly be able to get their attention. So, example, with that guy on the board, who's a high C, you know, if he actually just showed a little bit of dominance, everybody would have stopped. They would have kind of stopped in their tracks, type of thing, and going, oh my gosh, he's taking control. Wow, let's listen. You know, and that's the impact that understanding it can actually make. You know, I had the chairman of the Italfal board, Mr. Ravazzotti, is probably one of the most dominant people that you can find. He's probably, like, on the scale of dominance, he'd probably be in the 80 mark, and his influential would probably also be in the 80 mark. He's low. However, when you learned how to approach him and you learned how to take him on, you learned ways. I always found ways to bring his C out of it, by getting his attention in one way or another, by saying something that stopped him in his tracks to actually listen. And yeah, you learn ways to adapt, and it's a skill that you can use. I mean, if any of you have a current situation where you'd like to say, okay, this is my challenge with a person, let's identify who they are and how you can overcome that. I'm open to anybody that wants to bring it up.
So does anyone have somebody that you find that you battle to influence at the moment, you battle to connect with you know, battle to get them to understand you. Spouses are excluded from the conversation. No, we're up to that too. So anyway.
You know, when I actually say spouses helps a lot, after I learned how to start disc profiling, it was scary when I profiled my wife.
She probably felt the same way.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we wait for anybody there. I mean, let's talk about the relationship between Shirley and I. I mean, Shirley coaches me, and we coached for probably 6 months before we actually met. But we very quickly understood each other, and we very quickly knew what would work and what didn't work, because we both used the profiling to pick it up.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Okay, well, we're not getting any chat, so any questions coming up? So, you know, I want to just pick up a little bit here on Kenny's. What are the 3 things you're going to take away from today? So, you know, it's always important, and I think that's one thing about what we do is as coaches. You know, we're all about action. We're all about actually implementing. Otherwise, you end up with a whole lot of knowledge, a whole lot of it, and really it just doesn't mean anything. You hop onto the next webinar, learn something else, and then off you go, and we never get to really implement it. And it's the taking action, it's implementation of these little bits of knowledge that actually start creating different results. If we don't do that, we simply perhaps are just intellectualizing, so it won't have any benefits to you at all. And then you would have all just wasted the half an hour, 3/4 of an hour that you've invested with us this morning. So what we really encourage you to do is just have 3 things that you take away from today. So even if you're not familiar with DISC, is I'm going to Google DISC, you know, or I'm going to drop Shirley a line, or Annie, or Sean, or Kenny, or any of us a line saying, what the hell is this thing, you know, and how do I find out more? We'd be happy to answer that. If you're more familiar with DISC, then I think the question becomes, where am I not aware of my profile versus vis-a-vis the person who I'm interacting with profile? So how often when I interact with other people, am I aware of this? What can I do in future going forward? Today, what can I do? Who might I be interacting with? Who's the next prospect that I might be talking to? That I might just think, if I know that person, what profile might they be? And if I think I understand what their profile is, how would I adapt my behavior to meet that person's behavior? We talk about matching and mirroring, but there's a fine line. You don't want to be mimicking them, because that will probably give you a black eye. So don't go for the mimicking, but you want to match and mirror, because, you know, the reality is we like people like ourselves, and that's when you can behave in the same way, in the same style. That's when your prospect and your clients and your staff say, he really gets me, or she really gets me, and that means that you've made that connection. So that's my challenge to you, is if you're not familiar with DISC, drop us a line. We can help you become familiar with DISC. If you are more familiar with DISC, challenge yourself to get better at it. Challenge yourself to be that much more aware of it. Where can you be aware of it today? And can I today get a little bit better and a little bit better? So that would be my challenge to you.
Shirley, just to add into, I just want to add into that. Not only does it help you deal with other people, but it actually helps you develop yourself, because when you understand your own DISC profile, you suddenly start identifying where your weaknesses lie that you were oblivious to before. And through that, then self-development starts, and you actually become a better person in what you do every day, because you suddenly realize, you know, I might be a little bit withdrawn and I need to learn how to become more influential. And therefore you go out your way to find out, okay, how do I become more influential? How do I influence a room of people when I walk in? And it could go all the way down to just, you know, maybe it's the way I present myself. Maybe it's sometimes just how simple on how I'm walking into a room. You know, if you're walking into a room showing reservedness, then people are going to ignore you. If you walk into a room showing you energetic, enthusiastic, they'll take note of you. And it's understanding your own profile that can really truly help you close the next couple of deals that you have coming your way.
Cool, thanks, Kenny. Just a question that just come in. So if you're interested in finding out more about this, how can we help you? So we are able to do DISC profiles for people. We have extensive, that gives you an extensive report and knowledge into it about yourself as well as DISC. So we're able to do that for you just in terms of profiling. It's a very painless process. For a small fee, we can send you an online link and you do it and you get your reports and what have you. Obviously, if you want to get even better at it, we can always, talk about putting a couple of coaching sessions onto the back of that to help you really start implementing it. But if you're interested, by all means, just drop us a line and we can see what would best work for you to bring yourself up to speed. So we can definitely help you with that. Cool. All right, so any further questions anywhere? I'm just looking here if I can see from the question pane. I'm not seeing anything, although in the chats, I'm not seeing anything further. So I think that if there's nothing further, really just want to wish you all an awesome week. Anyone who's looking for some funding, remember to drop us a line there and we can put you in contact with Gavin there. And yeah, have an awesome week, and yeah, remember to take some action. Cool, Kenny, thank you so much.